Hi, everyone. I'm Matt Ricker, and you're listening to On the Rise podcast. I'm here today with Jim Oates, class of 1995. Jim, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me, Matt.
I'm glad you're here. So tell us a little bit about your Iona education, what you majored in, and how would you characterize it, and what was your experience, and where did it ultimately lead you to?
I'm as you mentioned, class of 1995. I met my wife in freshman year. We both were residents of the third floor of Loftus Hall. We didn't get married that year. We started dating much later and then got married thereafter.
Okay.
I was a finance major. There's a very important story that we can get into about how that launched my career. But I had a phenomenal experience at Iona. The friends that I met, not only my wife, but my closest friends are also alums, and we've stayed in touch all these years. And in fact, we're going to be getting together tomorrow as a sort of mini reunion. So I've had a phenomenal experience. I learned a tremendous amount, both about academically, but also about relationships and interactions and hard work. I was a member of the finance club, and it was from that experience that I actually got tapped on the shoulder one day from the head of the finance department, saying that there was an internship opportunity down on Wall Street, and would I be interested in interviewing for it? I said, of course. It turns out there was another alum, Steve Mattis, who was working down at that company, and they were so impressed with him that they asked, is there anybody like you at Iona? And I didn't know Steve at the time, but that's how that phone call was made, and he kept pulling. And from thereafter, we pulled another probably 15 or 20 interns into that company from Iona. And wow. So that was an internship in an internal audit function, which I knew nothing about what that was. As I got to know it, it was saying this would be a great way to learn how Wall Street works and how a company works, and it would be a phenomenal internship opportunity. But I wouldn't want to do that for the rest of my life. And 20 years later, I was the head of internal audit for UBS, which is one of the largest banks in the world. So I had a very successful career. And then I became the chief compliance officer for UBS. Left that in 2019 because sort of like full go mode, 90 hours a week. I needed just a life change. And since then, I've been doing sort of part-time advisory work, and that's when I re-engaged with Iona and in many different aspects.
That's great,
including doing podcasts.
Yeah, no, that's really nice. And you mentioned about when you started working on Wall Street and Steve Mattis and the interns from Iona. That's just a great example of Gales helping Gales.
Absolutely.
Even after we leave campus, that those connections continue and they flourish into bigger things.
Absolutely.
So it's great. It's always great to hear stories like that. So Jim, tell me, in your experience, what are some common misconceptions people may have about career advancement, and how can they overcome these misconceptions?
Well, that's a good question. The first thing that comes to mind is that, particularly in corporations, but I'm sure it applies outside of non-for-profit areas and everything, most people think you need to demonstrate career progression by increasing the number of people who report to you. So that you go from working in a team, and then you take over responsibility for managing one or two people, and then you want to lead a team of 5 or 10. I think that's not the right way to look at career progression. My thinking is, if you want to be a leader in life, a much better training ground is having the responsibility for influencing people who don't report to you. Because when you're someone's boss and you tell them to do something, the world trains you better do what your boss says. Mm-hmm. So the fact that they do what you asked them to do is not rocket science, right? That's managing people, and that's, for me, is a little bit overrated. The key is, if you don't report to me, but I motivate you such that you do the things that I'm influencing you to do, that's where real leadership starts to form. And I prefer people to pursue roles where they have a good scope of responsibility, a certain degree of a seat where they have part of the job would be influencing others, and then just trying to be the absolute best that they can be in that field, and focusing on the impact that you make with your role, how you leverage yourself in the role, and let the other things then follow.
So you've served in many leadership roles throughout your career with plenty of opportunities to lead teams of people. Have you noticed over time a particular it factor that you think helps people stand out in the workplace or to get ahead in their careers?
I don't know if it's the single it, but there is one that I always talk about. A differentiating factor is a lot of self-awareness, self-reflection, continuous improvement kind of mentality, and I'll give you some examples. In my career at UBS in particular, there were a number of near-death experiences that the company went through in the financial crisis in the years that followed, and had to be bailed out by, like some of these big banks do. And I was in positions where people would say, "Where were the auditors?" if in those instances. And naturally, thank God, but naturally, my instinct was to say, well, how did this happen on my watch? What could I have done differently if I rolled back the clock? What did I miss? What did I learn from this? What am I going to? How am I going to adapt? And other people take the tactic of deflecting, defending, blaming. Wasn't my fault. That's because Joe didn't do this or Susan didn't do that. And that's an it factor for me. If someone is aware that they can do better and take time to think about how they will do better, that I think is probably I'd hire anybody with that attribute who admits they're not perfect, but exercises that kind of discipline.
So let's talk about work experience. As many students progress in their undergraduate career, even their graduate career, and they're looking to begin in the workforce, no matter what your major or anticipated field is, what would your advice to them be? And as they apply for that job or internship and they ultimately get hired for either, what would you recommend to them as they begin or as they start off their new role?
Try things, explore things, be open to new ideas or new concepts. I thought I was going to be like an Elon Musk-like entrepreneur. That's what I thought in my college days. And I thought, I'm going to have to in order to be able to start a company. And then my life took over, and that didn't happen yet. But I didn't really know what I would want to do other than that. And so when I did this internal audit internship, which I didn't know what it was, but I took the job because it was an internship. And it was a very interesting way just to see, as you do reviews of different parts of the company, all the different kind of jobs that are out there, most of which I never even knew existed. And I think a big challenge we have with even our mentor program is that the students are not necessarily sure what field they want to go in. And the best way to find out is to try it. And maybe you'll love it and maybe you won't, and you know which thing to avoid. And I would say try and find jobs that give you the maximum optionality, that it's not so specialized that you're going to be an intern in a nuclear fission department where there's limited paths that you go on otherwise. Try and find something more generalist where you see lots of different things and you get a feel for what you like and what you don't like, and what are the jobs you get energy from, not drain.
Right. So let's shift our focus to Gales Go Further specifically. Can you take us back to a time when the program was first launched and what was the vision for Gales Go Further, and where are we now and where are we heading?
First of all, let me talk about how I first got re-engaged with my time, let's say, and talent. I joined the alumni board of Iona, and the reason I wanted to do the alumni board is that over my career, in my experience at Iona and over my career, I concluded that we learned all the things that they learn at the best schools in the country. We're now being recognized among them in all of the rankings. At the time, we weren't. We learned values better than most. But the one thing that the most elite schools had that we didn't was a structurally well-connected alumni network. if you've run into a fellow Gale, you have a great stories over what happened on North Avenue or the experiences in whatever affinity group you were in, and you do more than anything to help them. But running into them was very accidental. And I thought that's the thing that we need to fix and somehow make it easier for alumni to find each other and help each other. And that's where when I joined the alumni board, some of us on the alumni board were saying, a good way to start that flywheel would be to have a mentor program. So we started to talk about that at the alumni board. Concurrent to that, President Carey joined as the new president, and he came to one of our first alumni board meetings, one of his, when he first joined. And Mike LaPerch, the president of the alumni board at the time, asked President Carey, is there anything we can do? And President Carey said, I'd love if you guys would help with a mentor program. And so that's when, the little light bulbs started going off. A working group was pulled together of all the different aspects of the school, and the alumni board appointed me to be the alumni board's representative on that. And through that is how I became the alumni sponsor of Gales Go Further. And we had a number of meetings where another lesson that I told them at the time is it's always good to start some new initiative as a pilot, because it's a little less scary to people when they think you're just trying something, and it also gives you some freedom to make mistakes and learn from them and grow on that. So we started that with that concept. We'll pilot something. Mm-hmm. We talked about a vision that President Carey had, which was mentoring and mentorship should be a cornerstone of the Iona experience, which was a phenomenal guiding light. And that anybody who wanted a mentor could have a mentor. And that was the second guiding light. And they said, go, do it. So he was the leader who gave us the vision and the why, and then we went to go work. And so we designed, not what we have today, but the starting point, the foundation of what we have today. And the three things that I knew I tried to contribute in the early part was the lessons learned from my career about mentoring programs, which is in corporations in particular. They all try them. They all think it's an important thing. I was a mentee in companies. I mentored other employees. I was responsible for functions that had to participate in them. I was responsible for launching them. And unfortunately, all of those initiatives died on the vine. They weren't sustained. And you go, after a big splash of excitement about the new mentor program, 2 years later, you're going, whatever happened with that mentor program we had? And that's the one thing I did not want to see happen on my watch or my involvement here. So the three things that I've identified then that the working group all put our heads around, how are we going to make sure that doesn't happen here? One was to have a killer comms and branding strategy. And so the Marcom team at Iona went to work and came up with the Gales Go Further title, which is a phenomenal, all-encompassing phrase that I still gives me goosebumps when people think about it, is that, as a student who participates in the program goes further than a normal student in terms of their initiative. Same with alumni. It goes further than what a standard alumni does, and just not write checks, but actually give their time and talent. And then together, they go further in life, And the fact that it captures all of that for me is just still fantastic. So we did a lot of good, press releases and propaganda, and still continues with your work now, which is fantastic. Posters I see outside in the hallway, and QR codes, and Ionian articles, and advertisements, and alumni newsletters, and all that. And that we have to keep doing that, keep getting the word out. And it was a little bit probably frustrating in the early days that we thought we were communicating great, but not so many people heard. But now everybody knows it, I think, and it's in the veins in the article, and I think that's particularly on campus. As we've talked about, we still have a lot of work to do to get more alums to the table. But so killer comms and branding, you need someone whose full-time job it is to worry about keeping that program alive. That's you, right? So making sure, typically organizations have, that's like sort of an additional task to someone's day job, and that's why it dies, because you can't have that. It has to be primary responsibility. And then structuring that role where, it's not in charge of all mentoring experiences, it's enabling all mentoring experiences for anybody who wants to do that across campus. So that was building block number 2. And building block, that's tested when you have turnover in the role, right? So fortunately, when we've had turnover, the role's been replaced. So pleased you're in it, and that we're here, and it's still alive, and that helps keep it in the veins as well. And the third part was having a technology platform to support it. And if you actually can implement a technology platform, it's hard to get rid of it. It's not like an Excel spreadsheet that nobody knows where the file was.
Right.
And if you can get that technology platform to be the rails, the trains stay on the rails. And so that's where Gales Connect came into the equation. And Matt Carden and I collaborated took the work stream to go explore different technology tools. We found the one that we have today, which initially wasn't the best one to support the mentoring program, but it was the one that had supported the mentoring program, but it also had the promise to provide a strategic platform for a virtual Iona community across, like the live alumni network, or an alumni directory that people could interact on. And so that, going back to full circle, the vision of having a way to keep the alumni network structurally well connected, that's Gales Connect, and they can also then lean in and help students along the way and each other. And so that's how that journey started. And I think what I'd love is that there was the working group turned into a steering committee, which is now an advisory board, where all legs of the stool are represented across the Iona campuses, and with the alumni, and that continues to steer and guide and support and try and, if there's obstacles, think about ways to overcome them. And that's also another way that we'll know that 10 years from now we'll be talking about the program and not in past tense.
Yeah, I mean, can you believe that it's 5 years now?
I cannot believe it.
5 years, and we're having a celebration later this year, and
I can't believe
it's
it.
come a long way. I remember that first initial email that I got as an alum 5 years ago, saying we'd like you to serve as a mentor, and I went and I joined Connect, and it was really easy to do. And for those alum or students or faculty members listening to this podcast, we encourage you to just go on to Google, type in Gales Connect, Iona University, and the link will come up, and make an account. It's very simple to do, and you won't regret it because it's a great networking and mentorship tool. So speaking of networking, what role does networking play in career advancement? And do you have any tips for effective networking, whether you're a current student, alum, or maybe somebody who's not even an alum? Just general advice for that.
Yeah, I think that's also in the myth category about sometimes people are a little afraid of the word networking, or what does that mean? It can be a little bit smarmy that you're trying to find people to get something from them, or
right.
And just there's a little bit of the headwind to people's psychology about it. And I had that, definitely. Like, I'm not a person who maybe people disagree, but I'm not a person who tries to self-promote a lot on social media like some people do or whatever. But if you put a small n networking, so Steve Mattis had a connection to the dean of the finance department, who he called upon. I was connected to him because I was in the finance club, and that was a bit of networking going on, even though it didn't seem like it. And that's how I got my start. Right? I didn't think of it like that at the time. And then when Steve and I worked together and then did that for other Iona alums, and we didn't know them, but we got them, or we did meet them. And then staying connected since, and doing it not just to get something out of each other, but just to keep lines of communication, new ideas, learning about aspects. When I left UBS, I was trying to pursue a role, like a career as a professional corporate director. And on a part-time basis. And that people told me that's all about networking. And I'm like, oh boy, here we go again, like the same headwind. And I got advice from someone that told me, just be serendipitous. Someone asks you to go for a coffee, go for a coffee. Someone tells you want to meet up for lunch, meet for lunch. Ask somebody to go to lunch. They want you to speak at a conference, even though you might not want to, go do it. Might not have, because you never know who you're going to meet and what it might have, or the time that it will have. So I'm actually joining a new board of a company now that is chaired by my former boss at UBS. That
there you
from
go.
5 years ago.
Yeah.
Yes. So 5-year time. Yeah, 5-year time cycle. But keeping connected and keeping communicating.
Yeah.
And so sometimes networking, and I know we've talked about this at the advisory board. There's sort of a continuum of capital M mentoring, where you're in the course and you're earning 1 credit, or your flash relationship with an alum, or the flash maybe is a lowercase m, or you meet someone at a networking night and you're talking and he gives you some advice, and well, that's a lowercase m, and then you move into N, which is the networking, but it's not dissimilar. And my entire career, there have been people, your work colleagues, who are either assigned to me in mentor programs, or you just naturally gravitate to having a deeper conversation with, who gave me great advice. I'll tell 2 quick ones if that's all right. My first, when I joined UBS, you have to go through your self-evaluation process in this big corporate bureaucracy there's a rating system, and you could say you did a good job, or you did a great job, or you did an outstanding job, and I said, I don't know, if I put down I did a great job, does that come across? Should I just put down good job? So I asked this woman who was my sort of mentor type person, how should I play this? Like, is there a corporate strategy to winning this game? And she said, if you think you did a great job, put down great job, because if you don't promote yourself, who's going to promote you? Like, it's a good point. So I put it down, and I obviously didn't get harmed, and that was it was an interesting, intervention point for me. When there was a gentleman that I worked with at UBS who, even though I was the auditor, he was the auditee. He was a rock star on Wall Street. He's a lot of great experiences, and a lot of our conversations melded into life advice and career advice, and some of what he's told me over a couple of years sticks with me to this day. I reflect on him frequently. And even my decision to leave UBS, I still need mentors. Well, how do you shift now, going from a full-time operating role to these board roles? And that was the other thing about Gales Connect. So being able to find the guys and gals who in the prior years or who have maybe done what I did in the last 10 or 15 could give me some advice on what worked and what didn't. And I think it's so important to continuing not only professional development but also personal development.
Yeah, no, that's great. Now, let's as we wrap up, can you tell our listeners some content recommendations? Have there been any particular books, podcasts, or other content that you've found helpful throughout your career and that you would recommend to our listeners?
Yep. This is not a political statement, so don't take it this way, but for a leadership style, a leadership technique, it's setting out a vision and getting people to execute the vision without micromanaging, and optimizing, getting what you really want without having to have too much effort or drag. George W. Bush's book is phenomenal, in my opinion, and I'm not making a political statement, but it's a very good book. It's called I think it's Decision Points, and it's not a chronological report of his life. It's just the big ticket controversial decisions he may have made. He goes back to the beginning of when he was a child and how it formulated his views on the decision he was going to make, and then because I think he was a world famous delegator, like he didn't work as hard as Bill Clinton, people said, and all that stuff. So how did he delegate and get teams to deliver the outcome? That's one. And if you can do it on an audio book and the one that he reads in his own voice, it's even better in my opinion. But there was a book. So my first 10 years of my career was at a company called Donaldson, Lufkin, and Jenrette. That's where I got the internship from. Dick Jenrette, one of the founders, was also the CEO of the Equitable Life Insurance Company, and he's a world-renowned Wall Street figure. He wrote a book called The Contrarian Manager. That's a great book. Easy read, quick read. I would definitely, it talks about having conference rooms with no chairs so that the meetings go quicker, or that you don't have, you don't always have to do everything on your to-do list because sometimes they just go away. It's a very interesting book to break conventional norms. From a podcast, so how do I try and keep up on what's going on in the world? There's a couple of podcasts that I subscribe to in addition to On the Rise. It's going to be in the morning for world news, economics, markets. There's a radio show called Bloomberg Surveillance. I think it's 3 hours long if you listen to it live on the radio. They do a 30-minute podcast of the best 30 minutes, the most relevant 30 minutes, and I play it at 1.5 speed. So I can get all the highlights of what's going on in a very intelligent way in about 20 minutes. And so I do that most days. That one I would highly recommend. And then the Wall Street Journal is still one that I look at the headlines at least every day.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for those suggestions. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our Iona University YouTube channel and to get all the latest episodes of On the Rise, as well as our Spotify channel as well. We'd like to have your following so that this can grow. But Jim, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
Absolutely.
We really appreciate it, and I look forward to doing it again soon.
Great.
So
thank you, Matt. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you, and thank you to our listeners for listening in, and make sure you tell all your friends to like and subscribe to this. So with that, I'm Matt Ricker, and we'll see you next time.
Go Gales.